Here we go. Kamala Harris, she's back in the news, and it's not looking pretty for her. Kamala Harris has become the most unpopular U.S. vice president 6 months into an administration since at least the 1970s, according to polls. Alarmed Democrat strategists are grappling with the vice president's floundering poll numbers, which show she is now underwater, meaning more Americans disapprove than approve of her job performance. The White House intends to deploy her only in certain areas to campaign ahead of next year's midterm congressional elections, and will attempt to raise her profile by sending her on foreign trips in the coming months. The disappointing first months of her term have also worried long-term strategists, many of whom had hoped she would run for president as early as the next election. Two recent polls both showed 46% of Americans approve of Ms. Harris, with 47% and 48% disapproving. I think this is an Economist YouGov poll. They continue here. The only recent vice president to have similarly poor ratings after 6 months was Mike Pence, but he was not underwater. According to Gallup, 42.1% approved of Mr. Pence's performance at that point, and 44.9% disapproved. The previous vice president, Mr. Biden, had an approval rating above 50% after 6 months. Before that, Dick Cheney and Al Gore were in the 60s at that same stage. Even Dan Quayle, the much-mocked vice president of George H.W. Bush, was nowhere not underwater. I think I was supposed to say nowhere near underwater after 6 months. He had an approval rating of 43% and disapproval of just 22%, with 34% undecided. Mr. Bush himself was a popular vice president under Ronald Reagan, as was his predecessor, Walter Mondale, who became Jimmy Carter's vice president in 1976. So they also go on to explain, by the way, one of the more concerning numbers about Kamala is that only 36% of young people have a favorable view of her. And that is not good for a Democratic candidate, a potential Democratic candidate. So she's in trouble, and people are sort of flipping out, understandably, because right now, whether or not any of us like it, and I know that most of the viewers of this show don't like it, she is the heir apparent to the Biden throne, because politics, to a large extent, politics is name recognition. And so she will have name recognition more so than most other Democratic contenders in 2024 if she were to run, or in 2028. And with that more name recognition comes the default lead. I mean, we even saw it. She even was, among the top candidates when she launched the last time in 2020. Granted, she was pretending to be like Bernie early on, and then the second she showed her true colors as a milquetoast corporate neoliberal, her numbers plummeted. She made her campaign all about banning Trump from Twitter, and then everybody started hating her. But she will, yet again, in 2024, 2028, depending on what happens with Biden, she will be one of the leaders. And now even Democratic strategists are like, if that's the case, we're fucked. Because she's not dynamic, she's not charismatic. The more people see of her, the more they dislike her. Sort of similar to the Hillary Clinton dynamic. And they fear, they're not saying this part out loud, but I'll say this part out loud because this is what I fear. Yeah, if you have Trump in 2024 and he's got that rabid fan base, then the question becomes, is the anti-Trump sentiment still strong enough to basically make it so Americans pick any candidate but Trump? And that's a coin toss, man. I really don't know. If the Democratic candidate effectively stands for nothing, is coming off of a lackluster time as vice president, is not well-liked, I would be terrified of that scenario. I would be terrified. At least if you have Mike Pence versus Kamala Harris, it's like two robot insider corporatists versus each other. But if you have Trump versus Kamala, oh my God, I have no faith in Kamala's ability. Like, I think her and her staffers would overthink the shit out of everything, would be way too insular, and they could easily lose. Now, having said that, it's also possible the opposite happens. If it were to be Trump versus Kamala, it is possible that anti-Trump sentiment is still strong enough where people are like, anybody but Trump, because they did pick half-dead Joe Biden over Donald Trump. So you never know. Like, I'm very humble in the sense that I understand forecasting is a very difficult thing, and you can only do it so far out, and we're way too far out to make any accurate predictions. But do I think these numbers mean something, that Kamala's not popular at all? Yeah, I do. Do I think this means something mixed in with the fact that Trump's base didn't abandon him and he's outraising the entire Republican Party right now? Yeah, I do. So people are concerned, and I think they're right to be concerned. And, what the Democratic establishment doesn't understand is that you need somebody who at least pretends to be more than just another politician. And that even that vision is gone. Like Barack Obama, even though he was effectively, a status quo manager, and he was a tweaks around the edges kind of guy, he at least pretended to be more than that and to have vision. And that's what leads Democratic voters to fall in love with a candidate. And in the case of Kamala, it's like Biden skirted by on back to normal, barely. But for Kamala, that message isn't going to be strong enough, and being just another politician is not strong enough, and she appears to be only capable of that. And the final point is, I will say some of this is by design, though, because the Biden administration took like one of the more unpopular issues and just dumped it on Kamala's lap. And I think they did that strategically. I think Biden did that strategically to protect his own numbers, where he says, hey, the border, cool. Kamala's responsible for all of that now. I'm giving it all to her. And so this way now they don't attack Biden for border stuff. They attack Kamala for border stuff. And there was no winning on that front. You couldn't come up with policies that would appease everybody and make everybody happy. So I think it's sort of by design that this happened, but that doesn't mean the numbers aren't real. They're as real as a heart attack.